Hello there, lovers, friends and lovers. Thank you for joining us. This is the 69th episode. The 69th episode of 5 Minutes with Robert Nasir. Today is Sunday, June 27th, 2021, the 178th day of this, your best year yet. With 187 days left to make it so, that means by next week, we'll be halfway through. So enjoy it. Take it easy. This makes it your last chance to indulge in lazy optimism. Our last episode before 2021, in 2021, before there's fewer days remaining than there are behind us. So relax. Take it easy. We're taking it easy. I've got my cup of coffee here to take it easy. So easy.
I'm taking it easy, guys.
Amy is taking it easy. Amy got hit by a bad bout of God only knows. So she might be a little quieter than usual.
I have malaise.
Amy has malaise.
I'm the late 1970s today.
Yes, she was so caught by the fatigue she had to go to bath. And she's so fatigued by the bath that she'll have to go back.
Caught the vapors.
The vapors. Ooh, we'll talk about that. 181 days until Christmas. So the Christmas in July sales are right around the corner. And 126 days until Halloween. Where did you say they're already selling Halloween stuff?
At home.
At home stores. Stores called At Home. I'm going to At Home. It just doesn't sound right. But they did open one up here in Michigan. We should totally go. And on this day, June 27th in 1985, so 85, like 15 years ago? Good Lord, that's 36 years ago. Route 66, or Route 66. Route 66 was decertified.
Shouldn't we be talking about Route 69?
Route 69. Ooh,
I don't know, is there such a thing?
That sounds much more compelling. In 1985, June 27th, Route 66 was decertified, and the highway signs were removed. After 59 years, the iconic Route 66 enters the realm of history on June 27th, when the American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials decertifies the road and votes to remove all the highway signs. I'm not going to read the whole article. The link is in the show notes, but if you ever get a chance, you can still do Route 66, even though the signs are down. There is a Route 66 Federation that you can go to. 85% of the road is still there, and the Federation has created a route you can follow. Just before I left my last job, I worked with a guy, motorcycle rider. So all you motorcycle riders, Kirk Barbera, you can do this. He took Route 66 from Chicago all the way to Arizona on a motorcycle. Like, that's a hell of a ride. I'm a bike rider. I don't think I could do that on a bike, but even my rides are nothing like that ambitious. 3 weeks he was gone, comes back 40 miles from home in the middle of Michigan near Midland. He hits a deer, shatters his leg, went all the way down to Arizona, got all the way back 40 miles from home. So if you decide to take Route 66...
It was his friend's leg that was shattered. We don't know about the deer.
We don't know about the deer. I don't know. I'm guessing the deer didn't make out too good either, although it's surprising that you can hit a deer and they just scramble away and like, sorry. So yeah, he got all the way back 40 miles. So if you're taking Route 66, a lot of accidents happen. You travelers, people who travel by automobile, truck drivers know this. The accidents happen right before you get home. It's when you're most eager to be home. It's when you're most thinking about home instead of driving. So watch out for that. But yes, you can still do Route 66. It's often called the Main Street of America. Route 66 became a pop culture mainstay over the years, inspiring its own song, Get Your Kicks on Route 66. Later recorded by artists as varied as Nat King Cole, Chuck Berry, and the Rolling Stones, as well as a 1960s television series. The historic highway was featured prominently in the animated film Cars. What else? Today is also National Helen Keller Day, as June 27th, 1880 was her date of birth. She subsequently lived until 1968. She passed away at the age of 87.
Wow. Very nice.
Imagine being deaf and blind and living to be 87 to become a prolific author and speaker. Mm-hmm. And yet, anyway, with those handicaps, I'm overdue to rewatch the highly recommended film, The Miracle Worker, for all of its epistemological lessons. For those of you who are philosophy-minded, which is easily more than half of our audience, the film starring Anne Bancroft and Patty Duke, based on Keller's 1903 autobiography, The Story of My Life.
You should ask me what I'm drinking.
What are you drinking? What is that brown... I mean, it looks like it could be a chocolate shake, but I'm guessing it's something much more wholesome and disgusting than that.
Tastes so much better. But if it were a chocolate shake, no. This is it's got some Greek yogurt, some oat milk, some a couple of medjool dates, some spinach, and some really ripe, juicy strawberries that we picked last week at a You Pick berry place.
We did. We hand-picked those strawberries, but dates and spinach and...
Yeah, you don't taste the spinach.
Well, I'm loving the Axton's Diner logo on the glass.
Yeah, it's so
That's
beautiful.
very cool for folks
gorgeous.
catching this on video. Love that, but...
yeah, but no, this is my... I feel like when I go out into the world with my mask off, as I am double vaccinated, and I don't know, I come back feeling kind of worn out. And it's just getting a little bit, it's a slow go, this whole getting back to 2019 conditions. It's a slow go for me. So I just feel like my immunity is out of whack, and I just need to...
build it back up.
Yeah. One of my symptoms before I get if I get sick, like with the flu or something, is that, let me know in the chat if you ever have this strange... symptom is I get really, really angry. And sometimes I think, I'm not entirely sure why I'm angry. I just feel really tense. I feel the blood pressure, and I get really, really angry. Not like really, really angry. Not like I'm going to throw something angry, but just, it's a strange feeling.
Ornery. Not that she ever takes it out on me, or that I've noticed, or anything.
Oh, dear.
Oh, Jim asks, why are they discontinuing the designation Route 66? Yeah, they actually decommissioned it. They took down the signs. It's no longer officially Route 66. But the Route 66 Commission will give you instructions on how to follow the original path if you want to retrace it. So there's still people out there doing Route 66, even though it ain't Route 66 anymore. So yeah, Amy has been a little bit challenged, and there's a lot of other bad juju out there besides COVID. So
yeah. There is still the cold and flu and rhinoviruses and things like that. But
yes,
and
if you get a virus from a rhinoceros, that's a bad thing.
Or if a rhinoceros gives you a virus by poking you with its head.
They are uniquely horny animals. I wonder why that might come up.
Okay, so Mary Eileen says, my friend killed a cow in Utah. He was driving home from work. The friend, not the cow.
You needed to know. You do need to know that, folks, and now you know the rest of the story. No, it's not just deer. It's any large animal on four legs.
And I also want to just say hello to our friends out there right now watching us. It's Linda Cordair of Cordair.com, Quaint Cordair Fine Art. And that's my AKA Mom.
Who says, could not miss number 69. And, I sympathize completely.
And we have Cynthia, and I'm so happy she's here, and Holly, of course, wonderful Holly, and of course Mary Eileen, the ever reliable, wonderful Mary Eileen. She's a force of nature.
If YouTube ever lets our channel take super chats, then we got to get Mary Eileen on. She is the benefactress of the Ayn Rand Center UK, our other show.
Oh, and our friend Dale is on YouTube right now. He says, do you break for moose?
Do we break for moose?
That's on our bumper sticker, of course.
And it's funny, in Michigan, they tell you do not break for deer. You may be familiar with this idea. There's signs all over the place. Don't veer. You can break. Don't veer for deer. That's what it is. Because people try to go around a deer and the car goes out of control. Yeah. So yeah, do not veer for deer. Yes.
Mary Eileen says, one time I got seriously depressed for no apparent reason. A few hours later, I was barfing.
I'm telling you, your mind and your body are integrated, and some people take the notion of free will to mean that your body can't affect your mind.
I hope that's not what's going to happen to me. I hope not.
No, at least not for the next 5 minutes.
Yes. Oh, and Linda says she has a lot of mooses there in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. That's for sure.
Yes, well, she shared some wonderful pictures of the flora and fauna out there.
Yes.
What are we listening to this week? Excuse me.
Well,
Hit that cough button.
Yeah. Boop. I'm listening to the very first Duran Duran album.
That's right. You played that during the couch to standing workouts.
Yeah.
The songs have been stuck in my head.
Me too. Totally.
It's a better album than I remembered, but still a little dark and a little weird.
It's very dark.
Very dark, very weird, but clever stuff.
Yeah.
And I've been listening to the new album by the band Styx. Mm-hmm. You know, that old band from the 1970s? They've got a new album out called Crash of the Crown, and it is surprisingly good if you out there have any interest in the old band Styx. Album-oriented rock band, but they were also kind of an art rock band and bordering on the edge of a prog rock band. And you hear all of that on this new album. Good stuff. I definitely recommend the album. It's got a few dystopian themes in some of the songs that make it a little bit dark, but when it's joyful, it's really joyful. It's the old Styx of Fooling Yourself, The Angry Young Man, which is one of the happiest songs I know. And good stuff. Highly recommended. The other thing I've been listening to was Sam Harris's Making Sense podcast. In fact, I'm a subscriber to that podcast. I send the hearty sum of $2 a month, which gets me the commercial-free version of that. Mm. And as much as I disagree with Sam Harris on almost everything, and I've expressed some of those disagreements before, he's always intelligent, and especially has good guests on.
Yeah.
So the episode most recently that he published and that I heard was the mating strategies of Earthlings. Because, I don't know, he didn't feel like talking about the mating strategies of Martians or Jupiterians. But the mating strategies of Earthlings was the episode featuring Dr. David Buss, professor of psychology at University of Texas at Austin. The professor is grounded in evolutionary psychology, and their discussion was focused mostly on that. But Sam is a conundrum. Yes, he is. He, more than anything else, his determinism. And he's on a tear to get everybody to choose to believe in his determinism, which he doesn't seem to be having much luck with. Either you already agree with him or you choose otherwise. So, but this was interesting to me because whenever I hear discussions based on evolutionary psychology, the folks expressing these ideas project that they think they've explained everything, that everything can be explained in deterministic evolutionary psychological terms. But this time, Dr. Buss, David Buss, said, and I'll quote, I wrote this down because it knocked my socks off, they were talking about some unusual phenomenon that didn't quite fit the theories that he was talking about, and he said, and I'll quote, "We don't have adaptations for things that are evolutionarily novel." And then just after that he said, "We're just operating from our evolved psychology." Now, what I appreciate about these statements is their appreciation of context. Context. Complexity.
Ooh, nuance?
Yes, all too often biologists or cosmologists or physicists, and lately evolutionary psychologists, they don't just say what elements, life, the universe, everything, can be explained by their particular specialty. Instead, they claim, or at least seem to claim, that their particular specialty can explain every element of everything. So this was good. It was good to hear David Buss say, well, we don't have adaptations for things that are evolutionarily novel. Mm-hmm. In other words, there are things that happen that aren't explained by evolutionary psychology, that aren't the result of evolutionary psychology. And that's good. That's good to hear somebody smart say, something
I don't know,
smart.
Robert. I think that I think everything can be explained through bunnies.
Yes, you do. That is a thing that you think.
This is universally true. It's a fundamental, it's a principle, and it's an axiom.
Yes.
Bunnies.
So that made me think of the XKCD comic on purity, in which the sociologists make their claims and the psychologists claim sociology is just applied psychology, and the biologists claim psychology is just applied biology, and the chemists claim biology is just applied chemistry, and it goes on and on. A link to that is in the show notes. There are some related comics, and obviously I'm not the only one to say these people think their domain explains everything. It usually ends with the mathematicians thinking that everything is mathematics.
I was going to say that, but that's all fine and dandy and everything, but Mary Aline wants to know,
when does the sex start? Don't worry, it is coming.
yeah.
There are too many easy jokes for this episode, and we will get to them, so tadast me. So this discussion that was on Sam Harris's show, again, that took me to the XKCD comic. When you do the mouse over, it says, physics is to math what sex is to masturbation. And that brings us to the topic at hand. Incidentally, a comedian who I used to like made the point about masturbation that there's nothing wrong with masturbation. It's sex with somebody I love. And that's actually true in a more profound way than that joke would suggest.
Are you saying that math is masturbatory?
No, physics.
Oh, physics.
Physics is... No, excuse me.
Yeah.
Physics is to math what sex is to masturbation.
Yeah. So
That's really harsh to our mathematician friends, isn't it? I don't know why I read that backwards.
I mean, the thing is that if you've got... And it's math solitary?
I know why I was thinking backwards, though. It's episode 69. A few things are backwards today. So what is sex? Because, we always start off with a definition. If we're going to have a discussion, we want to know, well, what are we even talking about? I went to the dictionary looking for definitions and didn't have much luck. Because basically sex is the pursuit of sexual activity. And sexual activity is activity that involves the sex organs.
Sex organs?
I basically got nowhere with that one. And it took me back to the episode that I got in all sorts of trouble for. So I went to Merriam-Webster and it said, what do we got? Sexually motivated phenomenon or behavior. And the next definition is behavior that leads to sexual intercourse. But then I found 10 different definitions of sexual intercourse. And led me to coitus, copulation, mating, and sexual relations. So at that point, I gave up on sex. Oh, and finally, it led to lovemaking. And this is great because it took me to Cyrano de Bergerac. The Brian Hooker translation, Edmond Rostand. And in particular, the scene in Ragueneau's Patisserie, in which Ragueneau's wife is going to prove to be unfaithful, and that will have a big consequence for the plot. And Cyrano sees Ragueneau's wife with one of these soldiers, and he goes to her and says, "Excuse me, madame, is this man making love to you?" And in that context, of course, what it means is he trying to romance her? Not literally is he laying her down and having at it. But it just points to the fact that when you try to define sex or sexuality, you get to my crazy post, which is nobody knows what they're talking about when they talk about sex because nobody defines their terms. I'll get back to that. Leonard Peikoff once famously asked Ayn Rand, half of her audience are Ayn Rand fans, maybe more.
Maybe more.
famously asked author and philosopher Ayn Rand what philosophy has to say about sex. To which she answered famously, "It says that sex is good."
We've got some really funny comments going on right now.
Yeah, well, feel free to share them out. So yeah, I got in trouble for saying in my 10 unpopular beliefs, all of your opinions regarding sex are wrong because you don't know what sex is. If you don't think so, try defining your terms and then get back to me. I did go on to explain a little more, I don't know, what would you say, charitably than that. I said sexing is like loving. There are countless ways to love and countless levels on which love happens. Ditto sex. So what you count as sex depends so much on context that if you broaden your scope properly, you've got to realize that the whole damn world is a wonderfully sexual, sexy place. I think I said elsewhere, if you broaden your terms broadly enough, everything is sex. And I believe that is true.
Well, there's, I was going to say something, but
People are begging us to say things. They're begging for more sex. And we'll have to get to it.
We've got some comments here. We've got our friend Paul. Let us know later on if you don't want us to use your name. But Paul says math to bait is like a fish without a bicycle. And another commenter on YouTube, Ayn Rand Fan Club. Luckily, Dr. Ruth was around when I was growing up.
Well, we did discuss self-gratification. And you may know that expression, like a fish needs a bicycle, has been used by certain feminists to say that a woman needs a man like a fish needs a bicycle. And that all depends on your stock of appliances.
Self-gratification, we are organic individuals. We're organisms. We're not rocks or things, We're not inanimate objects.
I've never caught a rock indulging in self-gratification.
No. So just like all the other animals out there, maybe even the fish, I don't know, actually.
What, do fish...
where they find pleasure in things.
Oh.
You find pleasure in things that are physical all the time, hopefully.
Yes, remind me to add White Stripes' Instinct Blues to the show notes. That's relevant here. Even the birds get it.
Yeah, even the birds get it. Birds
so why
and the
don't
bees,
you? Yes.
Flowers and the trees.
So what does Ayn Rand say besides sex is good? Real quick.
She says a lot, actually.
Well, this will help inform our discussion. Since Merriam-Webster let us down with sexually motivated phenomenon or behavior, but then sexual didn't have a good definition. It was all circular. Although a lot of things in sex are circular. Ayn Rand. Sex is a physical capacity, but its exercise is determined by man's mind, by his choice of values, held consciously or subconsciously. To a rational man, sex is an expression of self-esteem, a celebration of himself and of existence. To the man who lacks self-esteem, sex is an attempt to fake it, to acquire its momentary illusion. And then she says in Atlas Shrugged, our dear friend Francisco says in Atlas Shrugged, just as an idea unexpressed in physical action is contemptible hypocrisy, so is platonic love. And just as physical action unguided by an idea is a fool's self-fraud, so is sex when cut off from one's code of values. Only the man who extols the purity of a love devoid of desire is capable of the depravity of a desire devoid of love. Got to love that. Takes me back to the Robert Heinlein quote. Let's see if I've got it here. Yes. Sex should be friendly, otherwise stick to mechanical toys. It's more sanitary.
Oh, Robert Heinlein.
Yes.
Yeah, so we've got Mary Leen. She makes a really good point. The meaning of make love to has varied widely over the years. It didn't used to mean carnal knowledge.
Carnal Knowledge. It's a Van Halen album title, For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge.
Yeah, I'm assuming she means intercourse or, genital
But
touching.
intercourse hasn't always meant what it means now either.
It's
In fact,
true.
I don't think it does anymore either, because, see, with the current enlightened age of LGBTQ, XYZ, and transgenderism, and you just can't call things, you can't limit people. So intercourse could be all sorts of things. So now they have what they call PIV.
What's that?
This is penis in vagina sexuality.
You mean the missionary position?
The missionary, well, there's many more than one positions for that, but yes. What counts as sex? Again, there are people who have sex who don't even have the organs for what traditionally counted as sex, so of course it can't be that. It's again why I say that sex is broad.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes there's not even a broad involved in sex.
Haha.
Pum.
Yeah.
So we'll get to that.
yeah.
Actually, we're getting to that.
We are?
Yes.
Good. There's a climax to this?
Oh, yes. Now go back a week, or was it 2 weeks, when we talked about ambition. And I mentioned the idea of some but any. You need some ambition in your life. You don't need constant ambition in your life, not if that means constant anxiety about achieving your next thing. And that some philosophical types have a problem with that. The idea that there's not one particular amount of ambition you should have, but there's a range that's valid. And determining where you fall in that range requires introspection. It requires self-examination. It requires knowing your own net values, and it requires knowing your own psychology. I think some but any is a great way to think about our sexual ambitions. And no one but you can determine the place of sexuality in your life, your lifestyle, your psychology. And as we say, that can take so many different forms that things that we didn't used to count as sex really are sexual. Mm-hmm. And other things that are very extreme in terms of sex hardly even count as sex. So I include everything to do with sexuality, from art, some people would say pornography too, if you call that art, to everyday life, to partners, to self-gratification, and nearly every other domain has some connection to sexuality. Life, the world, is sexy in 1,000 ways. And how intimately you engage with others is a part of this. If you don't think so, if you're married, try holding hands with somebody of the opposite sex and see what your partner thinks. I don't mean whether they would yell at you, but just what they would experience. And on that note, a word about jealousy.
Oh, well, before we do that, Linda Corsair says, what is your position on the subject?
My position...
Position.
Normally I don't admit when my position is all over the map, but I have to admit I don't have one fixed position in this regard. I'm willing to consider every position.
We've been watching The Golden Girls, and we love Blanche Devereaux's character. And, if you don't watch The Golden Girls, please do. And watch her character, because she's...
Amy needs all the kindred spirits she can get.
she...
If you've already watched all of the Murder, She Wrote episodes, it's time to get to The Golden Girls, or just Golden Girls, I don't know.
So, I'm turning into a 90-year-old. So, Blanche Devereaux is a great character, and she's, in her 50s or however, maybe even older, I'm not entirely sure. But she's super sexy as an older lady, and it's just so fun to watch. It's just so fun to watch because, you know what, sex isn't the sole territory of the young, So even when you get older, you should try to find some sort of pleasure, physical pleasure, with a person that you really like. And, back onto what Mary Ellen was saying, that the idea of, if you watch an old black and white movie And the two people, the love interests, are like, yes, I made sweet love to him. That doesn't mean that they actually engaged in anything sexual, but that could mean holding hands, that could mean cuddling, heck, that could mean kissing, and that could be like necking.
Is that first base or second base?
I don't know.
We need to talk about that.
It's a good question. Yeah. So yeah. There's and even just talking about like dreams for the future is to make love. Goals for the future, things you want to do to be romantic with each other, set up a home, a lovely cottage out in the country, whatever it is, however they talked back in the 1940s. That was lovemaking.
Lovemaking is an evolved process.
Yes.
Or should be. No, but I have to talk about jealousy because I came up getting bad puns here. I came up in the 1970s and 80s, excuse me, and the sort of free thinkers of the 60s were still making an impression. And I came up with Robert Heinlein as one of my, not role models, but idea generators. Mm-hmm. And in his book, Time Enough for Love, the quote that leads to that title is this, and I mentioned this before on our episode on love: the more you love, the more you can love, and the more intensely you love, nor is there any limit on how many you can love. If a person had time enough, he could love all of that majority who are decent and just. I'll do that one more time.
Yeah, say that one more time.
The more you love, the more you can love. And the more intensely you love. Nor is there any limit on how many you can love. If a person had time enough, he could love all of that majority who are decent and just. Now, that doesn't necessarily have to apply to romantic love only.
Right.
Obviously, we have familiar love, friendly love, the way I love all of you. But, of course, Heinlein did believe in open relationships and all sorts of other interesting ways of putting men and women together.
Yeah, Mary Elaine doesn't agree with that quote, I think. I'm pretty sure. She says, I don't think so. But
now, it is taking place in the context of a story of a man who lived for thousands of years.
Well, that's convenient.
Well, that's the idea. If you have time enough, then you could love everybody who is decent and just.
Well, I'll tell you what I get out of that quote is that, at least for me, I mean, okay, if you are introspective and you have a habit of integration, especially if you have a rational worldview and philosophy, and then you have a really lovely code of ethics with lovely descriptions of what virtue is, and this ability to see the best in other people, to identify that, and to see, and also to express that to other people. I think the more deeply, and I think the quality and the quantity goes way up as I get older in terms of how many people I really do appreciate and I really do love and I really find value in. So yeah, that's sort of what I get out of that.
But unfortunately, everything is finite. There's only so much time, only so many resources.
Yeah, Mary Elaine says she thought that it was all about romantic relationships in the quote.
Good.
Yeah.
And there's something to that too. Again, I was brought up in a time when jealousy was considered irrational. That there was no reason to be jealous, that psychological health meant that you didn't experience jealousy, or at least you could rein it in. And a friend of mine, whose name I won't give, but it begins with the letters J-Y. How many names begin J-Y? A friend of mine reminded me that a partner not only wants to be possessed, appreciated, desired, she also wants to know that her mate is able to feel jealous. That his mate is his only. A woman wants to feel possessed, and that means that you don't just let anybody else.
Do you have a definition of what jealousy is?
Well, I use jealousy in the sense Ayn Rand used it. I gave an example earlier this week that jealousy is wanting what somebody else has, or being angry that somebody else wants what you've got, versus envy, which is wanting the other guy not to have what he has, not to have more than you. But yeah, jealousy is that feeling that you get when you want what somebody else has.
I see.
Or it's the anger you feel when somebody wants what you have and they shouldn't. And it's unjust or not right.
I see.
Yes. So, again, I tend to think, oh yeah, nobody should be jealous. They should be self-confident enough. And I made the point before, if somebody wants to try to steal Amy from me, go ahead, give it a shot. You won't be able to. But if she would be happier with somebody else, I want her to go. You don't want to be too reckless with that kind of idea, because your partner wants to know that they are your highest value, and there's a sense in which they want to know that they are your highest possession, that you've earned them.
The man would fight for the woman, in other words?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
We had that conversation online earlier, too. Somebody was talking about irrational approaches to your enemies and how you never act irrationally so you would never violate their rights, for example. Well, I said, what if you're in a bar and somebody starts insulting in a really belligerent manner your wife or girlfriend or partner? Do you say, well, it would be wrong for me to initiate force, or do you take a swing at them? So I don't think these things are as simple as all that. I think jealousy has its place. And as my friend pointed out, a woman wants to know that you really take your values, including her, seriously.
Yeah, the only thing is that I don't think I would ever put you in a position of like...
No, you probably would keep me out of a fight. That's true. And at my age, I probably shouldn't be getting into fights. But
Yeah.
What did Detective Callahan tell us?
I forget.
He said, a man's got to do what a man's got to do.
Oh.
Oh no, that's not Callahan. That's
what is that, John Wayne or something?
Sounds more like John Wayne. That's
yeah,
right.
Tell us who said that, everybody.
I was about to say a man's got to know his limitations, but that's the opposite of what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
So,
Mary Leen also, I think, agrees with me. She says it depends. In most cases, I can take care of myself.
Well, it's one of those funny things that you don't want to tell the woman she can't take care of herself when you tell her, I want to take care of you. Mm-hmm. In other words, you don't want to diminish her in any way. What you're doing is you're putting her up on a pedestal, but you're not saying, you belong on a pedestal because you can't take care of yourself. You're just saying, this is your value to me.
Right.
And day in and day out, a good woman is self-sufficient and can get up on her own damn pedestal. So yes, it's complicated. You got to integrate the two.
It's highly contextual, you mean?
Damn straight.
Yeah, Dale chimes in. He says, jealousy is the primary self-corrector of promiscuity.
Interesting. I've always thought the best way to keep somebody from being promiscuous is to make them shudder at the thought of letting you down.
It's like that Harry Potter part, where Harry Potter gets into trouble and he sits down with Dumbledore, and Dumbledore says, I'm disappointed in you, Harry.
Yeah.
And Harry's like, oh no.
Yeah. I mean, I guess Dale is right in that if jealousy wasn't a thing, I wouldn't be hurt by your promiscuity.
Yeah.
So in that sense, I can see what he's saying there.
Yeah.
Makes sense to me. But either way, there's a value, there's a standard, there's something that you are fighting for, or something you are expressing your jealousy about. And you're saying, you are too important to me for other people to regard you as community property, even if just in their carnal desires. Speaking of standards, a topic that comes up a lot, well, depending on who your friends on Facebook are, is sex positivity.
Oh, right.
Since we're talking about sexuality, I don't know anybody who's more sex positive than I am, but I have a problem with the sex positivity movement.
What be this, mister?
Well, the problem is that it seems that they're protesting so much against intrinsicisms of the past, the kinds of irrational standards, that they want to throw all the standards out.
So it's a reactionary position.
It's reactionary. Nothing is good, nothing is bad.
It's the reactionary position.
The reactionary position.
That sounds so unsexy.
Yes. Well, they do have one standard, but it's the lowest common denominator. The one standard of the entire sex positivity movement, and even people who aren't into sex positivity will recognize this, their only standard, all they've got, on their scale from 1 to 10, they've just got this one little standard down here, and it says consent. Now, consent is crucial.
But it's only part of the context.
It is the least common denominator. It's the bare minimum. And if nothing is bad...
And I don't mean that to say it's okay not to force yourself on anybody.
Again,
it's just part of the context.
it's the least common denominator. It's the one line you don't go below no matter who you are.
Right.
But that doesn't really give you anything to
Right,
go
but
on.
it doesn't give you any positive assertions from
To
there.
say then that, well, but from there anything goes.
Right.
If nothing is bad or lesser, then nothing is good or greater, which is why the sex positivity movement, the bad and the good, both rise and fall to the least common denominator, consent. But there are standards. There is identity. And that's why my unpopular belief was rightly unpopular, because nobody wants to be judged.
Yeah.
And what's strange is nobody even wants to hear any judgments. They take it personally. But that goes right to my belief that everything is sex. Everything is sexual. People are extremely sensitive about these things, and what I'm slowly learning is they should be. They have a right to be. We are indignant of anybody judging our personal values. And, some people are indignant of people judging their personal values because they're oversensitive, but some of us are indignant because we take them very, very seriously.
Yeah, so when you had your list of 10 unpopular beliefs by Robert Nasir, I think your second one was everything you know about sex is wrong. Right?
Yes, that was number 3. Everything you know about sex is wrong.
And I said to you, I don't know if that's quite the way I'd put that.
Yes. So I'm acknowledging today, during episode 69, that Amy was right and I was wrong.
Oh.
And as I said on that episode, part of the reason to do the episode was to get ideas from y'all on how to improve it for next time, that I put that together. So my hope is that my friends in the sex positive movement, and I know some of them are listeners, some of the folks in the sex positive community will realize that reality-based standards work on the side of both sexual liberty and the demands of passion and values. You've got to say some things are good.
Yeah.
Some things are better than other things. And that's not to impose anything on anybody and to say, well, you should be into this thing or that thing.
Yeah, egalitarianism shouldn't be applied to anything, including sex, I think.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, well, similarly, my hope is that folks who are fighting for gender identity recognition will fight for standards. When their opposition states that transgender individuals have nothing but their feelings behind their identity.
Right. That's AKA conservatives.
Then the advocates need something more than just, yeah, that's right, and who are you to judge our feelings?
Right. It can't be. Yeah, you really can't have a foundation of subjectivism.
If you're fighting for the rights of people to claim their identity, it needs to be an identity.
Right.
It needs to have a basis. It can't just be, well, gender is social. Gender is social isn't going to work because it's not true. That's part of the picture. but it's only part of the picture. There's more going on there than just, I feel this thing, and you should respect my feelings.
Of course, if you disagree with any of this, please go ahead and...
Yes, tell us how you're wrong. I mean, tell us your wrong opinion. No, I mean, let us know what you think.
So bad, Robert.
I'm so bad.
Oh my God.
But wait, I have a right to be bad. Are you kink shaming me? Kink shaming.
I'm slut shaming you.
You're slut shaming me.
Slut shaming you.
That's the latest one I'm seeing is kink shaming.
Yeah, I don't mind the whole. Though I gotta say, the slut shaming movement, I think I do approve of it to an extent.
You approve of slut shaming?
No. The movement against.
Oh, the movement against slut shaming.
So yeah, the whole idea of.
Okay, let's talk about that.
Oh, just the whole idea of some ignorant dude saying, well, couldn't help herself because that's how she was dressed, and so yeah, how a woman looks is not responsible. She's not the one responsible for the other person's actions.
Right. Now, is it possible to say that there is an issue with sexual promiscuity?
Well, sure. I mean, it's not a problem to say that there is an issue with it. There's a negative aspect to being promiscuous. Sure. I mean,
so I guess we just have to define promiscuous.
Yeah.
Because I don't think promiscuity means sleeping with a lot of different people. I think sleeping with a lot of different people is a good thing.
Yeah.
It just shouldn't be reckless. It shouldn't be promiscuous.
Right. It shouldn't be unthinking.
It should be an enormous value to you, even if it only lasts a night.
Yeah.
Yes. Good. Yeah, I want to say to the people saying, oh, I don't like kink shaming, is like what? Do you want your kinks to be mainstream? Do you want your kinks to be vanilla? When it gets to the point where people online just, oh yeah, I didn't get spanked last night and I really wanted that. And you're like, be careful what you wish for. This is going to become vanilla. Amy jokes about missionary style. Well, now spanking is missionary. I go through a list of things that just aren't exciting anymore.
I want to see what reactionary style is.
Reactionary style. Well, probably in that. I haven't watched the television series. Futuristic dystopian women are just objects. Take you back to Salem, Massachusetts, and you're just a baby maker. Handmaid's Tale. Right. That's your reactionary sexuality.
It's the least sexy show in the world.
The least sexy show in the world.
Oh, God.
But seriously, to the people arguing against kink shaming, you want your kinks to be edgy. You want there to be a line that you're crossing. That's the whole point of kink. What is wrong with you people? There needs to be a line if you want to be able to say, ooh, tonight we're crossing the line. It's just...
I think you've lost me there, but...
I just don't understand people who want to say everything is normal.
Right.
I don't want everything to be normal.
Oh, I see.
I don't want everything to become vanilla.
I see. Okay.
That's bizarre. And I want to be able to celebrate the extremes.
Got it.
It's exactly like the gender issue, which is exactly like the race issue.
Yeah, I was going to say the race issue.
We want to be able to celebrate gender.
Yes, and we want to celebrate.
We're not trying to pigeonhole people in order to persecute them.
Right.
We're just trying to categorize people as what they are so we can celebrate it.
Yeah.
Same thing with race. Race is a useless idea for judging people. But it's a great thing for celebrating people.
Right.
Ethnicity is a terrible way to judge people.
Right.
But it's a great way to celebrate people.
That's right.
And the same thing with sexuality, which should be celebrated.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. And we had a... Can you just explain what sex positivity is for those people who don't know or haven't heard of that?
Sex positivity is a movement that sought to get rid of any remaining negative ideas about sex. Mm-hmm. And you think that wouldn't be a thing. It's 2021. Who still thinks there's anything wrong with sexuality? But, we mentioned Atlas Shrugged earlier. Mm-hmm. And Ben Shapiro, an intellectual who has millions of people listening to him, who has had conversations with Yaron Brook and
Ben Shapiro. Ooh.
At one point, he said, well, one of the problems I have with Atlas Shrugged is Dagny Taggart just goes from bed to bed. She sleeps around, and she doesn't seem to take relationships seriously.
What a maroon that guy, Ben Shapiro.
I've even heard objectivists say this. Young guys who are like, I don't like the way Dagny Taggart goes from Francisco to Hank Reardon to John Galt.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's a spoiler alert in the hell with that.
Yeah. Oops.
Dagny Taggart, as far as we know, in this novel, sleeps with 3 different men over the course of her lifetime. Over the course of her lifetime! This is the most prudish, old-fashioned... I mean, there are, a few years ago there were these so-called purity tests. This gets back to the XKCD comic. Look in the show notes for the connection. Purity tests. They would pass around through email, and then later on social networks, people would take a purity test. Have you ever, gone skinny dipping? Have you ever made out outdoors in a field? Have you ever, and they get more explicit as it goes on. Have you ever taken a purity test? You would be a scale 0 if you were Dagny Taggart taking a purity test and you've only ever had 3 long-term relationships with men that you were deeply in love with. And yet, there are still a substantial number of people out there, like Ben Shapiro, who look at that and say, oh yeah, that's really loose, that's really promiscuous, that's really wild, that's really, we can't have that. You can't build a society on those kind of sexual morals. So yes, is that still an issue? Does sex positivity still have something to say in 2021? Are there people who haven't gotten the message? Yes, there are. Strange but true.
Yeah, Marilyn has to run over to a Toastmaster function.
Give it to him.
But she says she has some questions here. Who's going to make a list of what's kinky? Isn't that like defining pornography, quote, I know it when I see it?
There is such a thing as sexual psychology, and there are norms. Just like we mentioned, one of the really low bars is consent. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. Don't know if I'm the guy for the job, because you may have noticed I don't talk about sex. I mean, it's episode 69. We kind of had to, but I'm one of those private guys who doesn't spend a lot of time with that. It's just like my attitude on profanity. I think that should be reserved for the bedroom and the battlefield.
Well, I mean, if you want to understand like what Ayn Rand thought of it, the best example, I think, anyway, in Atlas Shrugged, the least complex, I guess, is when Dagny and Francisco first got together and made love to each other in the woods and learned all the things that they needed to learn.
Yes,
and all the ways in which their bodies can have pleasure.
She describes it in just that way. They did everything they could think to do.
Yeah.
And that is as it should be.
And yeah. So it's they didn't go into that relationship as teenagers saying to themselves, oh, well, there's... What are the intrinsic standards for sex that are I don't know, godly or something? I don't know. I mean,
yes, Dagny Taggart is jumping from one lover to another.
Yeah,
3 men in her entire life.
3 men in her entire life, and I think a lot of those people who are a little, because I actually did when I first read Atlas Shrugged a long time ago, I thought, boy, that's a real heartache for Hank. That's, oh my gosh, I can't believe that she, she was carried away in another man's arms and she fell in love with him. But there's more to it than that. And there's so much context with regard to, oh my gosh, all the baggage that poor Hank had, and the fact that he was just, he was somebody that she could love and admire to the extent that she could at the time. But my gosh, I mean, meeting John Galt, spoiler alert, that was, just reread when she crashed and what all happened. Just read it carefully. I promise you'll have a better understanding.
I'm telling you, we're surrounded by sex. We just need to have our eyes open to it. And it's all over Ayn Rand's writing. Read good copy from the early Ayn Rand if you want to know what Ayn Rand thinks about sexuality. We just talked about that on one of the study groups, and I didn't get too much into that, but Ayn Rand's view of sexuality is as good as it gets. If you want to hear more about that, incidentally, you should be listening to the series Flirting with Reason on Wednesday afternoons at 4 o'clock with Nikos Sotirakopoulos and Maria Lazareva. And you'll find that on YouTube. It's one of the Ayn Rand Center UK's shows. But yeah, purity tests. And people like Ben Shapiro. I'm telling you, sexuality is still kind of a mess out there. And the solution isn't, let's all be more open, wide open. It's just, let's all be a little more rational and embrace our passions.
Yes.
I think everything is sex. Everything is sexual. There's a reason why when you look around on television and movies and magazine covers and everything is sold with, I was going to say sex, but it's really not. It's sold with romance. And I could do a whole episode, and maybe I will, on how you cannot separate sex and romance. Even a one-night stand should be value-laden. And that means romance.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Well, we're getting some more comments. I know we're 2 minutes to 7. Some people are having
Any
to pop
questions?
off, but goodness. Well, Cynthia mentions the author Jason Stotts.
Jason Stotts would be an interesting interview. He wrote the book on the subject.
It's called Eros and Ethos?
Yes, I have.
Ethos and Eros?
Eros and Ethos.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Sex and Ethics. Eros and Ethos. I have some disagreements with what he writes, but he is at least willing to examine the subject in depth and rationally. And it's good that there are people out there doing that.
Yes. Well, it really, we have a lot of comments and everything like that, and I think there's still probably some more questions to be answered. Maybe we should do a part 2 of this.
I think maybe we will.
Yeah.
So I will wrap up with my favorite joke on the subject.
Okay.
It's probably only my favorite because it's one that occurred to me one day. And it only works, I can only tell it here. I can't tell it on the networks, social networks. I can't tell it online because it doesn't work in print.
Mm.
Oh, actually, we do have a question here from, I think this is from YouTube. Should I tell my girlfriend I'm a virgin before we have sex for the first time or after? The interesting thing there isn't the question of before or after, it's the question of, should I tell her? See, if you ask it without that sense of, well, there's going to be this big event, and there's a performance question, and if you ask it outside of that context, the answer is easy. Should I tell my girlfriend about my sexual history? And to me, at least, having had a little experience in that regard, I think the answer is kind of obvious, and the answer is, oh, hell yes, because if you have a girlfriend, those are fun conversations to have.
And they are.
Now, here's the thing. It's value-laden. There's self-esteem issues. There's personal self-identity issues. There's all sorts of baggage to a question like that. But if you can set that aside just for a moment, look at it dispassionately, you'll think, oh, well, if this is somebody worth spending time with, yeah, that's a conversation we can and should have.
Yes.
Now, should it happen before or after you have sex? It depends on how early in the relationship you have sex. But assuming that you're not sleeping together the very first night you get together,
right,
then I would think there's plenty of time, to have that conversation ahead of time.
Even if you are sleeping together the first time you're together, I would say it's not a conversation for the first date. I mean, not unless the person is really asking it sincerely, I suppose.
But the thing I would say is don't separate the conversation and the act and the broader question of what kind of conversation should you have with a girlfriend. Mm. So, I know there's all sorts of strategies and stratagems and what do you say when do you come across with this aspect of your life and that. And me personally, and in my experience, but even in just broadly in terms of principles, the more wide open you are, the bigger and bolder you can be, the better. You will show enormous, the most attractive thing to a woman. The essence of masculinity is strength, and that expresses itself as self-confidence. The most attractive thing you can do is be wide open, not in an awkward way, not in a way of putting burdens on her, not of saying, oh, the thing I'm most insecure about is, but just put yourself out there. That's hot.
The one thing you should never say to your girlfriend is, you remind me of my old girlfriend, Julie.
Yes. That's the kind of thing you would think would be obvious, but you'd be surprised.
I mean, and I'm only saying that because that actually happened to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was. I don't want to remind him of anybody except for me. And goodness gracious, and I think that same thing goes for the reverse of if the woman was saying that to the man.
Yes. So yeah, my short answer is yes, you should tell her beforehand, but not because it's before or after. Just that's the kind of conversation you do want to have, and the kind of information you do want to share. And there's a certain kind of gal out there who's going to say, well, this is going to be so special then, and I can take you into the lovely world of this if she has any of that experience. If she doesn't, then you can, oh great, we can figure this out together. And God knows there's enough resources. Back in my day, it was, the joy of sex and books. Nowadays, it would probably be pornography. But whatever it is, there's plenty of resources out there for the mechanics. It'll all be new. It'll all be fresh. It'll be nothing to do with anything you ever saw before when it's you in that position or those positions. Had to get that in there. But yes, by all means, open up. The worst you can do is also the best you can do. The worst you can do is get a bad reaction, which is also the best you can do, because now if she's going to react badly to this, that's not a good sign for the future anyway. And maybe you'll be okay and you'll get through that. Get it out there. Get that information, boom, then. And give her that information, boom, then. And then get to boom, then. I just can't resist. It's episode 69. But yes, by all means, get to it. Cynthia, incidentally, says, Hank was evolving, Galt was evolved. I have done posts on why I agree with Dagny Taggart's romantic decisions. And I don't even remember all the reasons I gave, but there's dozens for each one of those decisions. One of the obvious things is that Hank Rearden was a married man who wasn't willing to leave his wife.
Right.
Well, what does that tell you? I mean, it tells you he had a lot left to figure out, but there's more to it than that.
Yep.
As much as Dagny Taggart loved and respected Hank Rearden, that was one of the spoilers. That was one of the ruiners. It was one of the wrenches in the machine. It was one of the bits of sand in the gears. And because she was not in the male masculine driving position, or rather, she was in the male masculine driving position, which is another reason why she just didn't see Rearden as her final choice. She was driving that relationship. And that can be okay. I don't mean to impose some kind of artificial sex roles, except, actually, no, it's not okay. And it's small wonder when the man of her dreams came along.
Yeah. Narendra mentions Edith Packer, and I guess she talked about no secrets between partners. No secrets
between partners. Well, that's another good point, is that if your relationship with this girlfriend, this goes back to the previous question, if your relationship with your girlfriend is going to last, or your friend, whoever you're talking about, I assume it's not necessarily you, because you asked it rhetorically, but if that relationship's going to last, you don't want secrets. You don't want there to be... And there are some things that, honesty doesn't require that you volunteer every bit of information. Mm-hmm. Kind of does require you volunteer the things that are relevant.
Yeah.
And, again, depending on whether we're talking about first night you're together or 6 months later, would determine, well, does honesty really require that you bring that kind of thing up? 6 months down the line, you should know each other that well.
Right.
So, context is everything. Depends on the context.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah,
And
Jose says about Hank Reardon that
he gave up his medal.
medal.
He really did love Dagny.
Oh,
and
yeah.
he shows his love for her.
Yes.
I
don't know if Jose meant that was a bad thing or a good thing, to show love or to look weak.
Yeah, well,
but
in the end it was both.
Yes.
I don't know if it made him look weak.
No, I don't
don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
And the great thing in the book is that it's made clear he's expressing that as paying a past debt.
Yes.
He's not trying to win her with that.
Right.
He's simply saying, this is the debt I have to pay for having gone through these previous evasions.
Yeah.
Now, once I do this to save her from those indignities, I'm free and clear. I no longer have to feel any guilt. Of course, he was wrong, and he knew in the end that he would have to continue to pay until everything was above board. But, yeah, not a sacrifice. And,
Yeah.
Yes.
Anyway, that's... We could... You know what we need to do is, after we have part 2, we can have a part 3 and just talk about all the sex scenes in Ayn Rand's novels.
I'm a big fan of Sex Part 2.
I would love that.
I'm a big fan of Sex Part 3.
Sex Part 4?
Well, Sex Part 4, some of you older guys might need a pill for that.
Oh my gosh, we're on a roll.
Yes. So, I'm just looking over my notes to make sure I didn't skip anything that I was determined to include. I did mention Flirting with Reason with Nikos and Maria, and you should watch that. It's funny, there's a podcast Facebook group, and when people are allowed to promote their shows, they're not normally allowed to do that. They have one day where they will, or one thread when they call it the Weekend Wank Fest.
Wait, what was this?
In the Facebook Podcasters group, of which I'm a member, they have the Weekend Wank Fest.
Okay.
Now, it's funny because when I hear the word wank, as a guitar player...
Yes, yeah, because it has the two meanings.
To be a guitar player is to solo pointlessly and endlessly and not necessarily melodically. But wheedly, wheedly, wheedly. Well, it turns out that the Brits have that as a common term for self-gratification.
Yeah, a wanker.
Although I think that's unfair to self-gratification. I have much more respect for self-gratification than I do for guitar players wasting my time with endless solos that aren't going anywhere.
Right.
And after all, masturbation should go somewhere. Mm-hmm. Come again? So, yeah, and again, as somebody we don't like said, I do like masturbation. It's sex with someone I love. It's a shame that Woody Allen ended up where he ended up. But yes, my favorite joke I ever made up that I can't tell in print because it only works if you speak it out loud was, what do you say after a ménage à trois? Was it good for you too? So there you go. Unlike most of our episodes, I don't have any homework. My only homework for this episode is...
I don't know, go out there and be human being and find pleasure in life.
Get busy.
Get busy.
Get busy. I don't know, that expression annoyed me the first time I heard somebody say, yeah, getting busy, but I don't know, I'm kind of getting used to it. Because I like how it sounds like work. But not work as in work, but just taking sex as seriously as you do your productive pursuits.
Yes.
I don't know. I think you all should get busy. If you've got a partner, get busy with them. If you don't, self-gratification is a good thing. But at the same time, you could be working toward your next relationship.
Yes.
Everybody's on a different journey. Some people are looking for different things. And, some people are young and still figuring it all out. Some folks are older and, may feel like some of that's behind them, although, I have friends who are as old as it's possible to be and still be above ground, and they are still in romance. So that's a beautiful thing. Who was the most recent one? Oh, Betsy Spicer has found romance again. And that was a hard one because she was married to Steven Spicer, and he was just, one of the greats, not just in objectivism, but in science and in general. And that took a long time to get over, but she's found romance again. And I only mention that not to get into her personal stuff, but just to make the point that there's no age at which it's too late or you're done. And I just love that. So I have no homework for the week other than get busy. I was trying to come up with a Post-it note for the week, and I ended up with a heart. on a piece of Post-it note paper because it's my reminder to myself to just love a lot. Just get out there and love people, and don't just go out there and look for sex, although you should definitely do that. But love people, love your friends, love your family, love your dog, love your bunny. I have another Post-it note that says, "Today is a good day to love." And then I thought, well, today is a good day to die. So then I naturally started going with that. So my final Post-it note, and this is what will be on my mirror, it just says, "Love hard." Love hard. Double meanings, intentional, but it is episode 69. Thank you so much for sticking it out with us. It may have been hard to get through this episode, but it was good for me. I hope it was good for you too.
All right, bye now.
So, as always, show notes will be posted within 10 minutes after the end of the show with links to at least some of the things we talked about that are safe for work. More information, including past episodes, can be found by going to robertnasir.com. Links to everything that you care about, including the Patreon. We've probably lost half of our patrons this week, including our Patreon and PayPal links. You can give a monthly contribution through Patreon. You can give a one-time contribution through PayPal. Thank you so much to all of you who have done so already. You are partially responsible for this mess. I mean, this episode. I mean, the fun that we have every week, and we do love you for it in the biblical sense, or just platonically.
Not the biblical sense,
Not the biblical
please.
sense. Yes, so thank you so much for that. Incidentally, if you go to robertnasir.com and then go to the YouTube channel, or just go to youtube.com/robertnasir, there's a new playlist. And it's the Adventure and Romance playlist has been updated. Where did that extra syllable come from? The Adventure and Romance playlist has been updated with additional past shows on love and romance and adventure. So it now includes our episode called Love. It includes our episode called Unconditional Love. It includes our episode called Love and Politics. That was a crazy one. It includes our episode on passion, and by the time we're done here, I will add this episode. This episode doesn't actually have a title other than episode 69. I couldn't resist leaving the title as that. Somewhere in the notes there, it's called Romance and Sexuality, but episode 69 just sounds so much better. I like it. So as always, we thank you so much for coming. We thank you so much for being here. And we wish you success. We wish you happiness. We wish you all manner of joys and pleasures. Mm-hmm. And as always, and in a slightly more interesting way this week, we do wish you love.